So if you're dealing with a narcissistic personality disordered individual and it seems to you like they have a split personality, like they're schizophrenic, they have dissociative identity disorder, sometimes they're really aggressive, really egomaniacal, really arrogant and entitled, and then sometimes they're as vulnerable as a child. You know, sometimes they show up like a monster, like a mob boss. And sometimes they show up like this vulnerable, lost child that you just found at the shopping mall who's crying, can't find his or her mum. It's really difficult because they're not schizophrenic, obviously. They're just using two different strategies. This is how they deal in their broken minds, in their broken souls, because of the trauma that they went through in childhood. This is how they deal with the world. And for them, the world is either something that you eat or you're eaten by. So you're either predator or prey. It's bordering on a psychopathic worldview. So what are you going to do? One of their states is going to make you feel frightened and intimidated and used and exploited. And the other one of their states that they're going to show up as is going to make you feel a strong desire to protect and to nurture. And if you don't do that, you're going to feel massive guilt and shame. So what's the effect on the target? So imagine you have a timeline that goes like this, and you're exposed to the narcissistic personality disordered individual, and you're going through two different states. They're showing up in two different states, and they could switch in a minute. They could show up in fight mode and be bullying and aggressive and highly narcissistic, classically narcissistic. Then they can show up as the vulnerable victim child on a dime inside of the same minute. And you're exposed to that over time. So now you have two stresses. You have the stress of the fact that you're in some kind of an intimate relationship where there's something at stake. Narcissistic abusive relationships only take place when there's something at stake. If the bus driver is a narcissistic abuser, you just say, well, screw you and disappear. If it's somebody who has no hold over you, you don't love them, you're not sexually intimate with them, there's no financial arrangement with them, there's no familial tie with them, you would just walk away. Let's assume that you can't. So you can't walk away. They're showing up in two states that are completely contrary to each other, which is massively confusing for you because they now seem like two people when they're one. And then the third thing you have to deal with across time is it's inducing two different emotional states in you. So they're showing up in two different emotional states as two different people, seeming to have split personality disorder, but they don't. They're just two strategies. And now you're processing all of this from two different states. One is one where you feel exploited, humiliated, and fearful, terrorized. And the other one is one of guilt and shame if you don't do the job of nurturing that vulnerable child who shows up. Imagine the horror of that. Imagine you're not you, and I just described this happening to somebody who's like you but isn't you. Wouldn't you feel sorry for that person? Imagine that goes on for a month, 6 months, 2 years, 20 years of being cycled through your reality being this and your reality being that. Your emotional state being this and your emotional state being that. Your intimate partner showing up as two different people and you trying to figure out which one they're going to be at any moment in time. And then unconsciously, your desire to keep the peace in a slightly people-pleaser and codependent way when you should just leave. Your desire to keep the peace, to make things okay, and to save that vulnerable child you can see, keeps you in a state of hypervigilance where you now have to become somewhat manipulative, you now have to become somewhat controlling, because you're trying to avoid the landmines that you're dancing through on a daily basis. Over time, you will split your experiences, I claim. This is my own pet theory, it's not published research. So my pet theory is that what creates an insurmountable, unbreakable trauma bond, we can break it, I'll explain at the end, don't panic, an otherwise insurmountable, otherwise unbreakable trauma bond is the intrigue and confusion that is created by you filing two different states in two different places in your mind. Imagine you have two hard drives and they don't interact. They store memory separately. So there's a lack of integration of memory. You're storing them as predator over here, and all of your feelings of them as predator go in memory bank number 1, and then you're storing them as vulnerable child, your desire to nurture, all of your guilt and shame when you fail to do your job over here, and they never integrate. They're stored in two completely different hard drives, and then you live like that for years. what's the effect on you? They're not schizophrenic, but now you are. Because schizophrenia, schiz or schism, just means a break. It just means a gap. Who has the gap? Is it you or is it them? They don't have a gap. They have consistency. Oh, I feel one way, so I'm going to treat you like this, and then I feel another way, I'm going to treat you like that, but I have one consistent memory. Who has the schizophrenia? You do, the target. The person who's being forced to generate two different personalities, to deal with two different personalities, and most importantly, to store these memories separately. I figured this out one time when I used to work at Liverpool Science Park. You remember I had my big whiteboard there? I was just drawing on the whiteboard, and I was like, oh, what is this? What's happening here? I was like, oh, wow, that's the essence of the trauma bond. For the target, for the victim, is they're storing the memories and the experiences in two different places. So how do we fix this? You integrate the memories. If you can integrate the memories, there is no more trauma bond. It ends. Because you're not dealing with two people, you're dealing with one. Why can't you leave? Why can't you leave the narcissist? Every single person, if you're a therapist or coach, every single client you've had, why can't they leave? Because, they're stuck between two polarities. They're stuck between two states. They can't leave because it's this, then that. So they start accessing the two different memory banks, but never at the same time because you can't, because they're not integrated. Oh, they're really mean and aggressive and they stole money from me and they cheated on me, but she's just a poor innocent little girl. But then she said to me and she was, but then also did it. And you just go crazy, bouncing between the two memory banks that don't integrate. When they integrate, and that person in your memory, in your emotions, because a lot of this, the memory side of this is really important. Hugely important. You may already know this. Post-traumatic stress, extreme trauma across time, it visibly shrinks the volume of the hippocampus. Now, what is the hippocampus responsible for? They're not 100% sure, but it's highly likely to be memory and the assignation of appropriate emotions to memories. And if that shrinks in volume, you literally lose your capacity to assign an appropriate emotion to an appropriate memory. So when they were abusive to you at Aunt Tilda's wedding on August the 23rd in 19 blah, 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 and they said blah, 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 why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? Why? Because you're storing the memories in two different places, which creates dissociation. What's the essence of schizophrenia? Now called dissociative identity disorder. Dissociation. Massive trauma creates what? A freeze response, which is, by any other name, dissociation. The freeze response is the essence of dissociation. You're dissociated. So these memories are not associated, they are disassociated. They're dissociated. So you're dissociated. You're not integrating the truth of what you're experiencing, so you're forced to live inside of schizophrenia. It sounds horrible. There is a way out, which is just to integrate the memory and then to do some exercises around assigning the appropriate emotion to those memories. The right emotion. The appropriate emotion, and when I say appropriate, I'm not like saying, oh, that's not appropriate. I'm saying if somebody aggresses against you and you become indignant and angry, that's appropriate. If somebody aggresses against you and you become sexually aroused and enamored of them, but that's not an appropriate response. That's not a good way to respond. And it's trauma that will mess that up. It's trauma that literally damages the part of the engine of your brain that assigns emotion to memory. So if you want to escape, you have to integrate the memories, and then you have to learn how to assign the appropriate emotion to the memories. The hippocampus can grow back in volume. What does it take? Well, some studies showed that playing Tetris can help. You could play Tetris, but I'd like you to do something a little bit more direct. The emotional literacy exercises that I gave people to do, like I came up with them 5 years ago, I suspect that they may help redevelop the hippocampal ability to recollect memories and recollect emotions. Why? Because the whole of the emotional literacy exercise is asking you to recollect experiences, to recollect, to remember experiences, to recollect, to regather them, to reintegrate them, and then to assign an emotion to them. That's all you do with emotional literacy, in essence, right? People in the comments tell me if that's true. That's the essence of the emotional literacy exercise. And if you do it over and over again, you might find it boring or awkward or weird. I really don't care what you find boring or awkward or weird. My job is to help you to heal and to move on. Over time, you might be exercising an atrophied muscle that allows you to find the strength to say, oh, this isn't two people, this is one person. The person who abused me and did these horrible things to me over here is the same person who's trying to show up as a child over here. Integrate the memories, all of the intrigue. Intrigue is massively important to keeping people locked into narcissistically abusive relationships. We're all investigators. We'll become, what does it mean? What is this? What does it mean? Why is there so much intrigue? Because of the split. Because of the split. You know it's not right. So you live like the Leonardo DiCaprio character on Shutter Island. You just live your life as a fantasy-based investigation over something that already happened and has long gone years ago. It's tragic. My new ideas around narcissistic abuse are that fundamentally narcissistic abuse traps you, me, everybody in the past. Why? Because the narcissist functions very well within the mythology of the vampire. They hide from the light. They operate at night in darkness. By day, they go into the ground, into a coffin. What is the coffin? What is the ground? The ground is the past. So what are psychologists? We're archaeologists. We go down. We read the hieroglyphs on the walls of the tombs of things that are long gone. And then we decode them because you dream in symbols. So narcissistic abuse is a way of entombing you in history. Whose history? Not yours. Not yours, their history. If you want to join me and live forever, you have to drink some of my blood whilst I drink all of your blood, and you come down into the past with me for my fantasies of former glory. They're always used-to-bes. All these narcissists are used-to-bes. They're living off former glory. Why is it always former glory? Why isn't it present glory or future glory? Because they don't live in the present. And they can't conceptualize the future because in many ways they're dead. They're just dead. They are the living dead. They are a vampire. They are a zombie. They're already dead. The authentic individual, the ghost of the authentic individual lives inside of its own memories. So when I say you enter their fantasy, it's not just any random fantasy. You enter their past in the crypt of who they used to be. You go down into the earth, into the past and in a tomb, and then you live there. You come out after years and you're like, wow, I can't tell up from down. I'm scared of the light. I'm scared of people. I'm scared to go outside. I'm even scared of the future. I wonder why. You're entrained. You are now as addicted to the past as they were, and you have to force yourself through this to become interested again in the present, in the light, and in the future, and it won't come naturally and spontaneously. If you want to know more about breaking the trauma bond, I have an updated version of the Break the Trauma Bond course, and it's inside the Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse course, which is available now from richardgrannon.com if you follow this link below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.